Hi, I'm Brian Fisher with D1 Ticker, and we're thrilled to bring you a very unique partner spotlight in conjunction with All Vote and No Play, an organization founded by basketball coach Eric Ravino that has made it a priority to help athletics take a day off and engage student athletes in the voting process and volunteer in the local community. With a mission of building teammates and growing citizens through the power of athletics, we're thrilled to link up with an all-star cast for what we're kind of terming a civics power panel. They will be joined by Dr. Kensa Gunter, a clinical and sports psychologist who's the director of NBA Mind Health, Jamie Zaninovich, the Pac-12 Deputy Commissioner and Chief Operating Officer, and somebody who really does not need much of an introduction at all, Steve Kerr, a former All-American at Arizona, and of course, a multiple-time NBA champion as a player with the Bulls and the Spurs, and the reigning four-time NBA champion coach of the Golden State Warriors. Hosting the conversation today is going to be Baratunde Thurston, a New York Times bestselling author and Emmy-nominated storyteller who's operating at the intersection of race, technology, democracy, and climate change, plus the very successful host of the podcast, How to Citizen with Baratunde. Today's panel is sponsored by GamePlan. GamePlan's comprehensive software platform integrates education analytics, virtual mentorship, and career services to equip collegiate and professional athletic organizations with the tools that they need to set their athletes up for success off the court. Last year, GamePlan supported 875 athletics organizations with over 240,000 e-learning courses completed, including high-demand content such as voter education, DEI, and mental health. Make sure you see what GamePlan can do for you by visiting wearegameplan.com. Now, nobody tuned into this video to hear me speak, so let's go ahead and dive into what should be a fascinating and great conversation. So I'll turn the mic over to Baratunde to get us going.
What's up? I am honored to be in this Brady Bunch box. This is like the opening of a wonderful joke. A sports psychologist, a league commissioner, and a professional head coach walk into a Zoom room to have a conversation about athletics, civics, and how to make teammates well beyond the field, the pool, the arena, but in our society at large. Again, I'm Baratunde Thurston, writer, activist, occasional comedian, creator of the podcast, How to Citizen. And I'm here because I'm tired of being sick and tired. I'm here because I'm fed up and I want to do more with the anger than just be angry. I'm here because I am drowning in the bad news that I get from all my screens all the time, telling me that powerful people over there are doing something to the non-powerful over here, and there's nothing I can do about it except tune in to more despair at 10 p.m. And I know that my fatigue is not mine alone, because I have met people along the journey of my life, starting with my mother, Arnita Thurston, may she rest in peace, who taught me so many things about not just surviving, but thriving in this world. I've had neighbors and colleagues and folks on shows who reminded me that there's more that we can do than just be passengers in the journey of our lives, that we can drive, that we can make the world we want to live in. And along this journey, in making this podcast, How to Citizen, where we take citizen as a verb, I encountered some folks from the NCAA and the Stanford D School who were on a similar mission. All vote, no play. Building America's teammates. This idea of the principles of our podcast, that we show up and participate, invest in relationships with ourselves, others, and the planet, understand our power and how to flex it, and doing that for our collective self-interest, not just our individual self-interest, that is pre-aligned with the best of athletics, the best of coaching. This isn't just about physical performance. It's about team performance. It's about collective benefit. It's about strength, not just through force. So thank the three of you for making this time to be here today. I want to get through those opening comments to set your expectations of where my energy is at, which is very fired up. And I want to start with each of you one at a time, understanding why you're here. What do you see as the alignment between athletics and civics, and what has brought you to this conversation today? Dr. Kensa Gunter, let's go.
Well, thank you so much, Baratunde. It's a pleasure to be a part of this conversation, and I'll just jump right in to answer your question. By trade, I am a clinical and sports psychologist, and when you ask that question about what is the intersection between civics and why is it important to athletics, I think because at the root of who is participating in both are humans, are people, right? And so thinking about how we can engage in and create environments where there's a sense of belonging, to use your word, where there's the focus on the collective, I think that's really important for us to think about. And sport historically has been used as a platform by many to advocate for issues around justice and injustice and equity. And I think it's one of those rare places in society where we see the value of team, we see the benefit of coming together. And if we can take the lessons that we learn in athletics and apply them to the world at large, I think that really can create, again, one of those environments where, like you said, we're all teammates for one another. And so I think really looking at the way in which the people who participate in athletics and sports can teach us lessons about how to participate and how to citizen is really a huge place where that comes together. And there's benefit to our mental, emotional, and collective wellness when we think about how we do this thing together. Again, whether it's civics or whether it's sport, how we do life together. And that, I think, is the bridge that connects the two.
How we do life together. That's a bumper sticker. That's a call to action right there. Thank you so much, Doctor. Deputy Commissioner Jamie Zaninovich, can you answer the same question? Why are you here? What are you seeing as the connection between athletics and civics?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks for having me. I'm humbled to be a part of this group for sure, and inspired by your words and Dr. Gunter's words. Listen, I think there's two things for me. I've worked in college athletics my whole life. I now work at the Pac-12. The reason I work in college athletics is because it is about this co-curricular activity, right? It's really about what young people who come to us when they're 18 years old and spend 4 or 5, sometimes 6 years with us, how they can develop emotionally, socially, in other words, otherwise, not just through the classroom, but in the fields of play, in the swimming pool, on the track. The lessons that they can learn being part of these teams, achieving, failing, struggling, learning how to activate their voice, their passion, and be a teammate and be a citizen, I think is incredibly powerful. And as a result, you create these dynamics within these teams with the profile and the popularity now of college athletics, where these student athletes now have incredible platforms. And the Pac-12, we encourage them to activate those platforms. And we've seen that sort of across many sports and our 7,000 athletes, for years. The other thing I would say is I'm very proud to be part of the Pac-12. I think for one reason I am proud is we have a long tradition of having game changers, right? You go back to Arthur Ashe, you go back to Jackie Robinson. We have had athletes in our conference that have been brave and forward thinking and have had the courage to help change society through their sport. And that's something that I think is incredibly powerful. I think you've seen sport change society in so many ways over time, and we should not lose that now more than ever with sort of the hope that we need to give the next generation. We all have a responsibility to leverage what we do, in my case, in Steve's case, and others in sport to help change society, or what is our impact? What is our real legacy?
Yeah, that sport goes so much farther than just sport. We're having this conversation about Serena Williams right now collectively, and that's not just about tennis, right? It's about representation, power, health equity, so many different things connected to that tennis court, but well beyond. Coach Steve Kerr in the house, man. I've been trying to stay calm this whole time, coming in very professional. Yeah, we got the doctor, the commissioner, but man, come on now. Hello, welcome.
Hi, Baratunde. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being had with us here. And the same question to you. What brings you here? And what do you see as the connection between athletics and civics?
Well, I may have another bumper sticker for you. I played for a couple of amazing coaches. Actually, I played for like 5 amazing coaches, but 2 of them stand out in particular in terms of their ability to connect life and basketball. And Phil Jackson used to have a great saying. He would tell us in Chicago, he said, life is a metaphor for basketball and basketball is a metaphor for life. And I really connected to that because it's amazing how true that is. When you're on a really good team and you feel that sense of community and you feel that connection, the team's better. And when you translate that to life and you witness something really beautiful, whether it's a classroom of students who are really interactive and learning from each other and teaching each other and enjoying each other's company, or maybe a thriving business, or a panel of people talking and really connecting, you can feel that a connection between people is really a powerful force, whether it's a force for winning basketball games or a force for changing society. It's that connection that teamwork that ultimately creates what you're looking for. I think Phil was right. Basketball really is a metaphor for life, and for anybody who out there who is actually coaching, one of the lessons that I've really learned is that engaging your athletes in things like civic responsibility is not just important in terms of making the world a better place, but a pretty powerful tool to make the team better too.
When we are talking, civics can mean a lot of things. And one of my pet peeves is that it sometimes is whittled down solely to voting. Voting is critical and essential. And so that's a part of the puzzle. It also includes many other things. And so inclusive of voting for anyone, and feel free to crosstalk with each other as you hear something that may resonate from someone else. What have you seen in your world of athletics, whether it's students who are your patients, they're in your leagues, they're adults on your team right now, or in their journey to get to where you are right now? What type of civic engagement, what type of citizening are you seeing that is deeply connected to the world of athletics? Anybody can jump in first.
I guess I'll start. I'll go back to 2020 in our conference, and what a dynamic time after George Floyd headed to a pandemic. And one of the things I think that was pretty incredible and dynamic that we saw in the Pac-12 was just how these young people, these 18 to 21-year-olds that are so incredible on the courts and also sort of in leadership roles, were inspiring we adults. Right? It's really not their job, but they were really grabbing their head coaches, grabbing their assistant coaches and saying, hey, there's a march in Boulder tonight. Hey, there's a march in Berkeley tonight. We're going. Get the team together. Let's wear our stuff. The team, to Steve's point, this is going to be a team bonding exercise because it's going to be something we can do together that's going to have an impact on something much bigger than all of us. And there were images all over the place of this. We're sitting here in a conference office. I mean, we're a little bit detached, but it was incredibly emotional because it really was sort of going back to some of the real impactful sort of civil rights history in this country where the young people were taking it upon themselves, which again, they shouldn't have to do, but they were so inspired by their energy. And, these athletes have this unique ability to, like Steve said, bring people together and to lead as a collective in a way that was really, really powerful. So that's just one thing that I remember from a couple years ago. That's continued. I think we're pretty proud of our programs in the Pac-12 that activity is not halted, thanks to people like Coach Reveno and others nationally. They've reminded everyone how to citizen, that this should be core to team building exercises and otherwise. So for me, that was one thing that really kind of inspired me, honestly.
Somebody else jump in.
Go ahead, Dr. Gunter.
Yeah, I think so. I was trying to think through kind of how I've seen it positioned, how I've seen this civics and this activism, if you will, outside of voting. And what comes to mind for me is, as it relates to the intersection with sport, is I've heard more people sharing their stories. And again, I'm a therapist, so I think about the mental health realm, but I think about the power of sharing your story as a way of humanizing people, right? And we talk about understanding our power and understanding the systems that we're in. But I also think a huge piece of civics is trying to understand the people that we're living alongside, right? And viewing them not just in the context of what they do or what platform they may hold. I really feel like trying to see them as the people that they are. And it's whether it's humanizing this conversation about civics, humanizing the conversation about voting. Voting is not just about going to the poll, but those votes that you cast have very real implications for the lived experience of people beyond that moment. And so as I think about athletes who have worn certain phrases on the back of their jerseys, if I think about the single site experience and the bubble experience, if I think about Black Lives Matter being written on the court for the WNBA seasons, if I think about the ways in which, based in Atlanta, the Atlanta Dream were really instrumental in one of our Congress votes here a few years ago, right? Thinking about Reverend Warnock. And if I think about the way in which people have activated in that way, but also demonstrated activism by sharing more of their story so that you get to know more of who they are. And for me, again, the mental health story has been one that's been really powerful. So I think, yes, action around issues that are important, but also sharing more of our story to connect us around that collective humanity, and humanizing us, humanizing us as people, understanding the collective, but also understanding the people that make up that collective. I think that to me feels like a huge element of the civics.
That's a really powerful reminder, Doctor. The humanity piece, and I think as much as I can pick at this idea that it's more than just voting, I also appreciate you reminding us it doesn't always have to be kind of in the streets activism either. And I know a lot of us feel pressure when we hear like participate in your civic community and get involved. It's like, do I have to go on a march? Am I getting a petition signed? And it can also be, from the mental health perspective, I'm thinking of Simone Biles and the kind of leadership that it takes as a high performance person to say, I'm not down to perform right now. And here's some of why.
Or to say I'm prioritizing my health.
Exactly. Right?
And
not just performance. Yeah.
Right. Remind you there's a person in there that we need to privilege and value and honor.
Honoring the person there. Coach Kerr, do you have anything to add in terms of some things you've seen as how people are showing up more actively in their civic lives?
Yeah, I'm really struck by what Dr. Gunter talked about in terms of just being human and being present. For so many athletes, they're in the limelight and they want to make sure they're using their name, using their words for a good cause. But sometimes it's just being there, listening. And I had a really amazing experience with Steph Clay about 3 years ago. It was just before the pandemic. And I do some work with gun violence prevention. I have a good friend in Oakland, Mike McBride. He's a pastor who does amazing work. And I invited Stephen Clay to come with me to one of the meetings that Pastor McBride has every month in Oakland. And it was part of this gun violence prevention program where everybody involved in that community in Oakland, whether it's police, social workers, the mayor, maybe Mayor Libby Schaff was there, pastors, gang members, everybody gathered once a month for this roundtable discussion. And it was part of a program that actually helped to limit gun violence over a 5-year period by 50% in Oakland. Really powerful program. Steph and Clay just came. They didn't take part. They just observed. And to watch all of the people in that room and see the look on their face, and for them to know that, man, Steph and Clay from the Warriors, like, these guys care. They care about us. It was really powerful. There were no cameras there. Nobody ever knew Steph and Clay were there. So this wasn't about, some headline or like showing who they were. It was just humanity and just being there for people in the community who are either victims of gun violence or people trying to limit gun violence. And it was a really great reminder to me of what Dr. Gunter just mentioned, just the humanity piece, just connecting with your fellow human being, how powerful that can be, especially for people who have that type of power that Steph and Clay do. I mean, people in the limelight, they can really impact people just by being there. But really, we all can. Just showing humanity to each other is just so crucial to anything that we're talking about.
The willingness to kind of learn in public and use the power of your presence on behalf of someone, those combined are really powerful. Sometimes I think I feel a lot of pressure in the current moments, whether it's climate related, race related, politics, electoral politics related, LGBTQ issues. There's a list that we often feel pressured to like have a statement ready. What is your stance on? How do you feel about this position? And it's okay not to know. It's also okay to find out, and to learn and in that process show that you're invested. Having the answers isn't the point. Being curious, I think, is a really essential value, greater than even having knowledge itself. I'm curious about any of the hard parts. And that can be interpreted in a number of ways. What occurs to me is you've got some public and outside pressure from the shut up and dribble wing, right? Why are you meddling and muddying in these matters? Just perform, do your thing. There's also the challenge of fatigue and even backlash to a level of activism and statement making by folks involved in athletics. And the 2020 moment has passed in certain ways where a lot of these companies are pulling back and people are kind of retrenching. So maybe there's a fatigue challenge, or maybe there's some other challenge in this work that you've identified. That what do you think people need to know about what might be hard as you continue to weave the athletics and active citizenship worlds together? Dr. Gunter, could you start us off with anything you might have experienced or witnessed?
Sure. I mean, I think it takes work and it takes intentional effort, right? Like, I think that's one of the things that sometimes is hard because in the midst of all the other responsibilities that we are trying to do, in the midst of trying to learn offenses and defenses and do strength and conditioning and win games and build team in our sport, in addition to also living our personal lives, because we talk about this, how to be a citizen, it takes deliberate effort and work to dedicate yourself to having a level of humility that allows you to recognize there are multiple truths that coexist in the world that we live in, and trying to understand somebody else's experience takes intention, right? Trying to educate yourself about issues that you may not be familiar with takes intention. That takes effort. And so it's not just going to happen, right? But I think that is a part of the hardness. In the moments where we may feel more disconnected than we've ever felt, in the moments where we may feel burned out, where we may feel exhausted, it's important for us to take care of ourselves. Let me be clear, right? We absolutely need to do those things to try to restore ourselves and replenish our energy. But it takes effort to be in community, right? It takes effort to value the collective. But ultimately, we all want to feel like we belong. And so that level of reciprocity, that level of us needing to be able to give and to take, to show up and to listen, to be present and to sometimes do, all of that takes work. And so I think the hard part is this is not something that can happen separate from the life you're living. This has to be integrated into the life you live, and it takes effort. But the reward can be tremendous, right? But it takes work.
We want to close on those rewards, and I'll have to do a kind of lightning round. Deputy Commissioner Jamie, do you have anything to add on this one?
I think Dr. Gunter's words really struck me. I think, we don't always know what actions are the right actions to take. But I think as leaders, you can always approach it with a vulnerability and a curiosity, right? And I think it's really important. I think Coach Kerr talked about this with his players, to say, I don't know, or just to start with emotion, say, I'm scared. That concerns me. I don't know what the action is. But if we can open up the conversation by being vulnerable people and being willing to learn, that opens up the conversation for all, and especially those in leadership positions like coaches. The more vulnerable and authentic you're willing to be, and we're seeing this in the next generation of athletes, I'm sure Coach Kerr is as well, you have to do it that way. You have to connect with them, right, to motivate them and keep them bought into the team. So there's an incentive system in that too. But I just think this authenticity, this vulnerability, this willingness to not know, this willingness to say, I don't know, I'm scared, it concerns me, I'd like to learn more, just opens up the door for people to work together instead of, what we've seen a lot, which is shutting down, people taking kind of bifurcated positions.
Coach Kerr, so what's the hard part you've seen in intertwining these kind of different parts of people's identity? And to anticipate where Dr. Gunter was going to take us, what's the reward?
Yeah, well, I think what Jamie mentioned is so important, the vulnerability aspect of it. But the hard part of being vulnerable is that we're living in an era where people are out there ready to pounce as soon as you make a mistake. And that's what I've found, being in the public eye. I've had to really make sure that I feel like I have a good grasp on what I'm talking about. So I think it's important, if you're going to be involved in the community and involved in some kind of, social change that you're looking for, find a passion, find something that you're particularly interested in, and focus on it, and read about it and get to know your subject. For me, that topic is gun violence. I lost my dad to gun violence when I was 18 years old, and so that issue is my passion. And I've really had to learn really since I started talking about it publicly, which started in about 2016, I think. I've had to learn a lot of things. I made a lot of mistakes just with my words and phrases. For example, if you want to try to connect with people who are on the other side of the gun issue, don't say gun control. Say gun violence prevention. It's an important distinction, because if you want to actually make connection with people and actually create progress, there's got to be common ground. And I've got a dozen other things that I could say in the same realm of expressions that I needed to learn, things that I needed to learn, statistics that I had to learn. But because it was a passion of mine, I really wanted to learn, and I found great resources to help me. And now I've really connected with some of the gun violence prevention groups nationally, the Brady Center and Giffords March for Our Lives. I've learned so much from these people, but the reward has been phenomenal. I've received letters and calls from students, high school students, junior high school students, thanking me for speaking up based on what's happening around the country. It's incredibly moving and inspiring to get feedback like this, and to learn and grow and meet like-minded people in what is really a nationwide movement to try to improve our society. So I guess that's my thought, my advice is to focus on something that you're passionate about. Otherwise you can sort of get yourself in a little bit of trouble, the way the world works these days. But the rewards are really, really impressive and satisfying.
We are always short on time in discussions like these. Dr. Gunter, I want to give you an opportunity. Any last thought that you want to share? I'll come to you, Jamie, as well as you, Coach Kerr, and then I'll put a button on this and let us get back to the rest of our days in our citizenship. Go ahead, Doctor.
There are two things that came to mind, and I've used this phrase now in a lot of talks and presentations that I do, and I'm sure it came from somebody much wiser than me, but I'll share it. And it's, we're human beings, not human beings. Right? And so as we think about civics, as we think about team, as we think about community, as we think about ourselves, it's really important for us to think about how we show up and how we can be in the world. And a just and equitable society is beneficial for all of us. And again, I have to take it back to the mental health part, right? Like, our mental health is impacted by what happens in us, to us, and around us. So in addition to thinking about the ways that we take care of ourselves, the ways that we take care of each other, and the way that we help to create systems that promote health and wellness for the collective really creates a society that's better for all of us. And so those are some of the things that I think are important about this intersection and again, how it intersects with life. Thank
you for that, Jamie.
Yeah, I'd say two quick things. This has been incredible. Again, working with young people like we do in college sports, I think there's really this void of hope for the future for them. And I really hope that our leadership, and I think that is affecting their mental health. We're hearing it, stories, every day in terms of we're trying to load up the services on campus. It's not just athletes, it's college students more broadly and youth more generally. But there's really this lack of hope because of sort of everything that they're being bombarded with. And I hope as leaders we can turn that around. And I think it will lead to better mental health, will lead to better, the reward will be a more just, comforting, and supportive society for all of us. It's a massive undertaking, but whether it's climate change or social justice or otherwise, these kids are being bombarded, and I hope we can all step up and make a brighter future for them. Related to that, I think Coach Kerr brought up something really important, which is this notion of sort of talking to the other side, right? I mean, we have people that are so entrenched in their positions, and we need to find a way, and his is a good example, to reach out and to speak to quote unquote the other side, and people that have different ideals and philosophies and otherwise, and come together in a way to determine this brighter future for sort of the young people of tomorrow who will lead us when we need their help. So those are sort of my two takeaways.
Coach Kerr, bring us home.
Well, I think the fact that, as Jamie said, our athletes, our students are getting bombarded with bad news and the difficulty of living modern life as a result, it can cloud the picture. There's a sense that, oh my gosh, the world's in a terrible place. The world's actually in a way better place than it was 50 years ago. There's a lot of great things happening, a lot of wonderful people doing amazing things. There's a lot of beauty on earth. Yes, there are a lot of problems, but we live in a time where it's media for profit. So, we're watching, if you watch the news, it's not really news. It's just people trying to make money by sensationalizing everything, which is terrible for our mental health. So how can we help our students and our athletes and people around us understand that, pardon my French, but all that stuff is bullshit, right? It really is. What matters is human connection, truth, and how do you get to the truth? It's through communication and respect and interacting with people in your community. But we've got to find a way to lessen the mental impact of all this bombardment of negativity and divisiveness that is in many ways created just for profit in our world.
Thank you for naming that. Thank you all for this beautiful communication, very respectful. I feel more connected to each of you in certain ways. Coach Kerr, I didn't remember that about you. I lost my father to gun violence when I was a child as well. And so I'm feeling extra human with all of you right now. Thank you for your vulnerability, your honesty, and your reminders, as I interpret it, that we're not alone. I think, some of the weight that we've described, some of the news pressures, some of the criticisms and expectations, they weigh more heavily when we try to carry them by ourselves. And the principle of sport, as well as the principle of a democratic small d society, or any society really, is that we're stronger together. We heal more quickly together. Our health is improved when we take it in a collective consideration and know that we can't do any of these things all by ourselves. That's really a torturous and unhappy life. So thanks for coming together to remind us that we can be better together. Really appreciate all of your time here and certainly off screen. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Baratunde. That was an excellent conversation. Really appreciate all the great insight from all the panelists, and as well as for just taking the time out to join us. Want to give a special shout out as well for All Vote and No Play for helping organize this panel. It was a terrific organization that really has made it a priority to help athletics take a day off and take a little pause and engage student athletes in both the voting process as well as volunteering the local community. I want to also make sure that we thank our sponsor for this panel, Game Plan. Remember, Game Plan's comprehensive software platform integrates education, analytics, virtual mentorship, and career services to equip collegiate and professional athletic organizations with the tools that they need to set their athletes up for success off the court. Find out what Game Plan can do for you by visiting wearegameplan.com. For everybody involved in this, thank you so much for tuning in. I am Brian Fisher with D1 Ticker. We'll see you again next time.